Ready?
Place the mark on the page. Prove to yourself that you're in the fold.
Hello, my name is Taya Hickenbottom. I'm a motion design senior here at Ringling College, and it is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Joey Corman, founder and head instructor of School of Motion, an online school that helped train motion designers all over the world. Before becoming an educator, Joey started his career as an assistant editor at a production company in Boston, Massachusetts. About 3 years ago, he began freelancing and spent around 7 years building his career in motion design. Joey then decided to change paths and move into teaching. He taught here at Ringling College for 1 year and then switched to full-time at School of Motion. Since then, he has also become an advisor, investor, and co-founder for other companies. Today, he dedicates his time to teaching and helping motion designers build successful careers. Please join me in giving a big future-proof welcome to Joey Corman.
Thank you. Thank you, Taya. Thank you, Ed, so much for asking me to be here. I think I told Ed this when I worked here. I think it, ironically, was probably the day that I told him I was leaving. I said, working here for a year was one of the best years of my life. And it kind of leads nicely into what I'm gonna talk about tonight. So I'm gonna try something a little different. Normally, I talk about motion design and like what the industry's doing and AI and stuff like that. So I was really excited when Ed asked me to talk about entrepreneurship because I think there's a lot of myths about it. And it's not what you think it is, especially before you've had your first job. So my goal with this talk is I'm gonna teach you some things. I'm gonna give you some business tips because some of you will go out and start companies and there are mistakes that everybody makes and hopefully you won't make them because I'm gonna tell you not to. But my hope is really that at least a few of you walk out of here feeling like you got hit by a meteor. Like, oh my God, everything I thought I knew about life is wrong. Because, you know, as I remember, like when I was sitting in your chair, getting ready to spread my wings and go into the world of adulthood and work and money and all that stuff, I had a pretty clear idea of what it was gonna be like because of the way I was raised. And I'm sure you guys are raised in a similar way and it's all lies. Okay, so that's talk's over. I hope you guys, if you have any questions, okay. All right, so I wanna start by asking you the hardest question I've ever been asked. So something popped into your head, right? And because you're all at Ringling, some of you are seniors, you're getting ready to graduate, you realize that you're gonna need money for stuff. I'm sure a lot of you thought a job, maybe a specific job, maybe, you know, Karen Fong was here, so maybe I wanna work at Imaginary Forces, right? That is the wrong answer, okay? I paid a business coach $2,500 a month for 2 hours of calls each month for him to ask me this question 100 times. Every time I brought him a question, hey, this employee's not working out, or this marketing campaign's not working, sales are down, and I've got 3 options, which one do I pick? And he would just ask me this. This is the most important question that anyone will ever ask you. And my hope is that by the end of this, you think about it completely differently, okay? You've spent, if your childhood was anything like mine, you've spent your whole life being prepared to get a job. Does that ring true to anybody? Yeah. Right? And I'm sure you've had mentors, and I know, Ed is not like other people, as you all know, okay? You're at Ringling, you're at a special place, so you've probably gotten some of this, but most people, when you get to where you are, haven't spent a lot of time thinking about your life. You think about your job, right? And this is backwards. So this is, I think, how most people, certainly how I saw it when I was in your chair. Most people treat the job like it's the foundation, right? Okay, I need a job. Okay, I have a job now. Okay, now that I have a job, I can turn that into a career. And that career is gonna let me basically know what kind of life I get to have, where I get to live, how much money I make, how much I work, who my boss is, who my coworkers are, all of those things. This is completely backwards. This is what I did for years. You find a job, you try to build your life around the job, okay? Funny enough, the reason I ended up teaching at Ringling is because I finally learned this lesson. And I stopped everything. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you do this, you will have years where you feel successful. And then one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, something's wrong. Life is wrong. And I don't know why, because I did what I was told. I did what I was supposed to do. I got a job. I built a career around it. And now I have this life. Hang on, is this the life I actually wanted? And it's painful when that happens. So I'm hoping that this talk can kind of prevent that for some of you. So the goal was never the job. The job is a means to an end, right? And the question is, what is that end? So let me tell you a little bit about my story. Some of you may be familiar. This is Ringling, so I'm sure you've heard of School of Motion. I talk about this stuff sometimes, but this is me probably in 2001. I went to Boston University. I wanted to be a film director. They have a film and television program. I got in. I was surrounded by all these brilliant students that were into film and stuff, and I thought, I'm gonna be Steven Spielberg. I took one film production class where I actually had to shoot on a film camera and develop film, and that just put that to bed for me. I wanted no part of it. So I got into post-production. I wanted to learn to edit, okay? So before I was doing anything motion design, I was an editor. And there was a problem. The problem was, back in those days, it's very different now, but back in those days, to edit, you would use an Avid. And Avid is still a thing. You can still buy the software, but back then, you couldn't just buy Avid software. You had to buy a whole system. They were probably started at $50,000 all the way up to $250,000 or more. And so Boston University, for its 400 communication students, had 4 Avids. And so you'd have to go and check out time to use them. And if you were lucky and you were an upperclassman, maybe you'd get 2 to 4 hours a week on it. And I wanted to be an editor. So I was very lucky that right at that time, Apple launched these new computers, and they launched Final Cut Pro, and they had a student version, and it was $300. And I was working as a valet at a bar, which was honestly one of the best college jobs I've ever had. They pay you cash, and they didn't care that you weren't 21. It was great. And I bought Final Cut Pro, and back in those days, there was no YouTube. There weren't Final Cut Pro tutorials. You get on Creative Cow or you read the manual that came with it. And that's what I did. I taught myself Final Cut Pro. And so while everyone around me, and I mean 100% of the other students, were signing up for a couple hours a week of Avid time, I was editing all of my student projects and other things in my dorm room whenever I wanted, and I got good at it. Now, it blew my mind at the time. I could not understand why I was the only one doing this. It made no sense. And at the time, I definitely didn't have the perspective to understand this, but I was born with something, and I'm gonna tell you what it is. Does anybody recognize him? Probably not. This is an art school. Probably not, not a big football school. Okay, so this is Brian Bulaga. Okay, Brian Bulaga was an offensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers. He's won the Super Bowl. He played with Aaron Rodgers, okay? So if you know anything about football, he's a big deal. So I live in Lakewood Ranch. It's about 30 minutes from here. And twice a week, in fact, this morning I did this, I go to a gym with private trainers and we do a small group, and it's like me and other business owners and realtors and people like that, and we all work out really, really hard. And that gym is really known for training professional athletes in the off season. So there's always professional football players, professional baseball players. It's really kind of cool. So when I started working out there, I walk in and he was doing squats, okay? Now, that picture is probably not accurate. He's much taller than that, okay? 6'5", 314 pounds. And watching him work out, first of all, he's obviously stronger than me. no one would question that. He's faster than me. He's more flexible. He can do the splits. He is not the same species as me, okay? But he didn't choose that. That's just how he came, right? And that's how all of you are. All of you have something, 2, 3, 4 things that you didn't pick that are gifts. I don't know of a better word. And so this is a really obvious one. When you see a professional athlete, you understand that it doesn't matter how hard you work out, I will never look like that. Doesn't matter. I will never play football in the NFL. But what I got was curiosity. So if I want to learn something, if I'm curious about something, I need to know right now, and I'm not waiting. And I've always been like that. And I didn't have the words to describe it. Oh, one of my gifts is curiosity, but now I realize it. And I realize that has led me to where I am, standing up here talking to you about entrepreneurship. And I point out curiosity because that is one of 10,000 gifts that you may have. And I'll talk about some of the other ones. But if you have curiosity, that is a really good sign that you may be an entrepreneur in there somewhere, okay? So I taught myself Final Cut Pro because of the curiosity. I didn't want to wait to learn to edit. I didn't want permission. I just did it. And so then after school, I got my first job by applying for an internship. I was lucky because I applied at this production company. They had just bought a Final Cut Pro machine and hired an editor. He wanted an assistant editor. They interviewed probably dozens of interns. None of them knew Final Cut Pro, but I did. So that's why I got that internship. I had also, I think a copy of After Effects fell off a truck or something. I found it, and so I was practicing that a little bit too. And there was one night where I stayed late to help him edit a commercial. So he had an ad agency sitting like in the couch in the room with him. They were editing this Subway commercial. And as they were editing, they realized one of the actors said a line and a little piece of spit came out of their mouth. And back in those days, it wasn't obvious how to fix that, right? You didn't have content-aware fill and all these easy things that fix it right away. So what they would normally do is they would take that shot, they would transfer it to a tape, they would send that tape across town to a visual effects house and probably pay $1,500 an hour for a flame artist to fix it, then send it back. The thing was supposed to go to air the next day, so this was a huge problem. The editor, who became a good friend of mine, he knew that I was dabbling in After Effects, and he thought, I wonder if Joey can fix it. So he calls me over, he's like, Joey, do you think you can fix this? So he sent me over to the assistant computer, he sent the shot over there, I opened After Effects, I had the manual because I did not yet know how to use the clone stamp tool. So I looked it up, I made it work, I fixed the shot, and I got hired 2 weeks later. So that curiosity, there's like a straight line from that to my career. And a lot of times when people give these talks, it can be easy to sound like all of this was planned and I had this brilliant insight and I followed that. No. This is all hindsight. But by me telling you what I noticed in hindsight, I'm hoping some of you will see this and actually aim in the right direction. So curiosity, it's an unfair advantage because almost nobody acts on it. People still wait for permission. It drives me insane. When I ask someone at School of Motion to do something and they say, I don't know how, it drives me nuts. Because it's 2026, you can ask ChatGPT, you can look at, there's tutorials, School of Motion, there's nothing that you may think you want to learn that you can't learn probably in 2 to 3 days if you just do it, okay? So the entrepreneur doesn't wait. You have to be impatient, impatience plus curiosity. If you have those two things, keep listening. Okay, so here's another concept I want everyone to really lock in on, okay? So every weird thing that I was curious about, at the time, it was just like, oh, I'm into this. Oh, I'm into this. Oh, I tried this, I didn't like it, right? But that curiosity led me to do all these different things. So this is just a sampling. I've run 16 or 17 marathons. It's like a weird thing. Why would anyone do that, right? In running marathons, you learn to suffer and be okay with it. Turns out that's useful as an entrepreneur. I taught myself to edit. I taught myself After Effects. I taught myself Cinema 4D. I had a side quest as a voiceover artist. I actually had an agent. I was on an MTV show for a while. Turns out that the ability to speak into a microphone clearly and raise and lower your voice to keep things interesting turned out to be very useful for me. At the time, I had no clue what I was going to do with this. It was just extra money, but I was very curious about it. And I sucked at the beginning. I was really bad at it. I hired a voiceover coach, which is one of the most awkward things that you could possibly imagine. Okay, you have to imagine like a 75-year-old woman smoking cigarettes in a Brooklyn apartment while I'm like talking into a microphone that's not plugged in. And she's critiquing me, okay? But I was so curious. I wanted to get good at it. And so I did that. I got better at it. I got booked. I'm a serious musician. Probably everyone who watches School of Motion is aware of that because I talk about it constantly. I was in bands that toured for 10 or 15 years. And what does that have to do with School of Motion? Well, it turns out when you play shows consistently in front of crowds, especially big crowds, you have to learn to control your stage fright. And you have to be comfortable in front of cameras and crowds and people. Oh, it turned out that that was really useful. And when I was going through that and I'd get really nervous, I would like read books about like stage fright and stuff because I was curious, why am I so nervous? How can I fix this? So the curiosity led me to that. And then when I was a kid, I was always into computers. I'm definitely a nerd. And my mom bought a computer in like the early 90s and I wanted to make computer games like everyone does. And at the time, there was no Unreal, there was no Unity. It was all like code. So the computer came with a language called BASIC, and I went to the bookstore and I bought a BASIC language book. I was probably 12 reading this thing, taught myself BASIC and made games, okay? Now, I'm not a programmer. I don't really do that anymore, but that came in really handy when I had to make School of Motion's first website, right? So you have all of these weird things that, and this is just my unique collection. You all have your own. Right? And everyone has a different one, and that's the cool thing. Every single person in this room, if you made this slide, it would look completely different. And if you think of each of these things as circles, and in the middle there's a little bit of overlap, a tiny window where they actually all connect, that's your secret weapon. Because if you look through that little window, you will see things that no one else on earth will see. And they'll be obvious to you, and you'll wonder why no one's done that yet. And it's because their talent stack is different. They're seeing things you're not seeing. So curiosity is going to lead you to all of these things that may seem completely unrelated to motion design and to what you might do in your first part of your career. But I promise you, at some point, you're going to be like, oh man, I really am glad that I learned to play the clarinet. It came in handy, So entrepreneurship, it's not about having a brilliant idea. It's about having enough of these little zones that crisscross in the middle that you can look through, all right? It's about a unique perspective. And you will see holes in the world that everyone else walks past. So I had my first job. I quit. I went freelance. I write about that journey, by the way, in the freelance manifesto. I brought 10 copies. So if anyone doesn't have it, the first 10 people to go to that box will get one. But after freelancing for years, and by the way, while I was freelancing, I was like, how do I get clients? How do I do sales? How do I market myself? How do I make a website? These are all things I was curious about that I had to learn, right? Those came in very handy for School of Motion. But at the time, I was like, okay, well, how do I progress? How do I keep getting better at this? Well, when you get to a certain level with freelancing, your income, your opportunities are kind of capped, right? There's 24 hours in the day. Everybody has the same amount, and I can't work anymore physically. So what you do is you start a studio, right? And the way a studio works, and I know the review guys are in here, so I'm sure they'll nod their heads, but they won't be happy I'm saying this. The way a studio works, the model is the studio bills more for its time than it pays the artist for their time. The difference between that is how a studio can scale, okay? That's the leverage a studio has. And it's a difficult business model, but if you pull it off, you get to have this like amazing group of people that you get to work with and you make cool stuff and the work gets better and the budgets get bigger and the problems get bigger too. But that was the obvious next step for me. So I started a studio with 2 co-founders in Boston. They were already running an editorial shop. They were being asked to do motion design. They didn't know anything about it. So I came on and I co-founded Toil with them. And I ran that studio for 4 years. I learned so much during that 4 years about how studios work and why I'm not really cut out for the studio life. But here's the crazy thing. So on paper, if you saw me during those years, you would have seen a guy who had his own studio in the heart of Boston with an awesome office, a roof deck overlooking the Boston skyline. We would throw parties, clients would come. It was amazing. We had a beer fridge. We'd order sushi twice a week. We were working on national spots. I was the creative director. I had a producer, executive producer, junior animators. We had all these freelancers we were working with. It was, on paper, incredible. But here's the thing. So I'm pretty happy-go-lucky. Anyone who was a student of mine at Ringling probably didn't see me, without a smile on my face most days. That's just how I am. At the peak of Toil's success, I was actually depressed. And that's probably only happened twice in my life, okay? And it's so rare for me that I didn't actually know what was wrong. My wife had to explain it to me, oh, you're depressed. That's what that is. I was like, I just don't want to do anything. Well, it's depression, Joey. That's what it is. And it made no sense to me because I'm a logical person. I was like, but look at my life. I have all these things. We own a house. We have 2 children. And the problem was what I referenced earlier. So this is what my life looked like. I would get up really early because Massachusetts is expensive, okay? I don't know if anyone's from there, but it's an expensive place, okay? Especially relative to Florida when I moved here. And so we couldn't afford a house anywhere near Boston. So we had to live an hour away. And so how did I get to my office? Because remote work wasn't a thing yet. I would take a commuter rail. I'd take a train, basically. And if I was lucky and there was no traffic and the train was on time and there was no snow and no rain, it would take me an hour and a half door to door. But a lot of times it was 2 hours. If it snowed, it might be 4 hours. So my commute could be anywhere from 3 to call it 6 or 7 hours. And I had a baby, right, that I barely ever got to see during the week. And I realized I had lost control over my life. If I was at the office about to leave to catch the train home and a client called and said, hey, we noticed one mistake, I was missing that train, right? And it drove me nuts. And I had this realization, and again, at the time I wouldn't have used these words, but I think what I had done was I had hit the wrong target at full speed because I had not chosen that target deliberately. It was by default. I got a job in this industry, then you freelance, then you start a studio. I just kind of did the path, right? And it's sneaky because from the outside, it really does look like, wow, everything's going great for that person. But all you're seeing is the job and the career and that stuff. You're not seeing what should be underneath, which I had basically ignored and hadn't thought about. And along comes this guy. Everybody knows this guy, right? Nick Campbell. So you guys probably are too young to remember when Grayscale Gorilla started. Now you just go to their site and it looks like this big company and, it's like a thing. When it started, it was Nick Campbell on a Vimeo channel making camera and photography tutorials. And then one day he made a Cinema 4D tutorial and that one did really well. And then he kept doing those. And then he launched one product and it sold and it just snowballed from there. I mean, it's been a company for probably 15 years, right? But I remember watching the beginning of this and I was at Toil watching Grayscale Gorilla tutorials so I could figure out how to do the Cinema 4D thing I wanted, like everybody. And Nick would talk about not just like Cinema 4D, but he'd sometimes just talk about his day. So I got up this morning and I made coffee and I walked around the block so I could get some fresh air. And then I sat down and I thought of the 2 things I want to do today. And so I'm going to do that and then I'm going to go hang out with my wife. I was like, oh my God, how do I get that? That's what I want. I didn't want Grayscale Gorilla. I didn't want that business. I wanted the life he had because that was his business. And it sort of cracked my head open, right? That was the beginning, really, of my entrepreneurship journey, was that moment when Grayscale Gorilla came around. And one of the coolest things about School of Motion is I've gotten to be friends with him, and he's just as nice as you'd think he is. So this is the way I would like everybody to try and think about your job, okay? Or your business. Job, it could mean anything. It could mean you literally go work for someone else. It could mean you consult for that person. It could mean you have a company with employees, okay? But at the base of it is that question I asked you at the beginning of this. What do you want? Like imagine your life. What do you want it to look like? And then pick a job. Will that job let your life look like that or will it stop your life from looking like that? So there's a book I'll recommend to everybody. It's kind of old. It's called The 4-Hour Workweek. The author's Tim Ferriss. And ironically, when you read it, if you go down the path, you'll be working way more than 4 hours. But the whole core idea of the book is this. It's people do it backwards. Figure out what you want your life to look like, and then you reverse engineer the career that will take, and then you can find a job that plugs into that, or you can make a business that plugs into that. And it is completely backwards from what we are taught growing up. That is, I was never told this. This was like a mind-blowing revelation when I finally found this. So here's what it looks like. So on Tim Ferriss's podcast, right around the time I was reading this, I was listening to him talk to business leaders and stuff like that. He had Debbie Millman on. And Debbie Millman's a pretty well-known designer. And she talked about this exercise that she does sometimes called the perfect day. And I'm gonna ask all of you to do it at the end of this talk. The perfect day is this, it's really simple. You sit down with a piece of paper and you imagine it's 5 years from now and it's Tuesday. It's just a normal day, nothing special about it. But it's perfect, everything's perfect. But you need to really think about the details. So you wake up and you look around. Okay, which bed are you in? What is the thread count on the sheets, okay? Is there someone next to you? If so, is it the same person that's next to you now or someone different? You look out the window. What do you see? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it gray? Are there palm trees? Is it like you're in Europe and there's medieval castles? What do you see? And then it's time to make coffee. What kind of coffee is it? You really go through everything, right? And that includes, of course, okay, it's time to go to work. How do I get to work? Am I working from home? Am I biking there? Am I walking there? Is it walkable? Or do I need to get in a car and drive 2 hours, Do I need to take a train and round trip 3 hours? And how much money am I making? And what does my day-to-day look like? All of those things. And after you've done that, you can then ask yourself, if I keep doing what I'm doing right now, will I end up there or somewhere else? And it is so quick, you realize, either you're on the right path or you're not. That part's easy. If you're not on the right path, and most of the time, if you've gotten to the place in your life where you're doing this exercise, you're not, then you have to change something, okay? That's what led me to Florida, to Ringling, and eventually to School of Motion. So my wife and I did this together, and my business coach at the time told me, go further, turn it into a vision board, okay? It's a very woo-woo kind of thing, which I'm cool with. I can get pretty woo-woo, don't worry about me. So I made this. This is my actual vision board I made probably back in 2012 or 13, something like that, okay? And what is crazy is 2 years later, 100% of that came true. So there is something to this idea that when you aim at something, you are way more likely to hit it than when you just go forward by default in whatever direction your parents or the school system or your first job point you in, okay? You're allowed to decide what your life looks like before you decide how you're going to pay for it. You have to separate these things, okay? And most people never realize that. Okay, so that was like the, Tony Robbins motivational speaker portion of this. I want to talk tactics now, okay? And if any of this is kind of sounding interesting to you, then entrepreneurship for most people means starting a business, okay? I kind of want to broaden it. I want it to mean designing your life intentionally, because that's what entrepreneurs do. Business happens to be a really good tool to get the life you want because it can scale and you have control over it, right? So the business is secondary to what the entrepreneur wants. Okay, but let's say that you want a business, right? You want to build something. How do you get it? So I'm going to tell you about 3 mistakes that I see damn near every beginning entrepreneur make. I've seen it over and over again, and I just want to nip that in the bud right now, okay? So here's the first one. And being at Ringling, I know all of you can probably relate to this already. Perfection is your enemy. That is so counterintuitive to a lot of artists because you want it to be perfect, right? You're willing to stay up hours to make the thing perfect. That can really bite you in the ass, okay? So this is a real example. So with all due respect to both these companies, I'm going to tell you what I think about this. So in the olden days of motion design, let's say the early 2000s, the place you would go to find the coolest work was Vimeo, believe it or not, okay? And you'd go there and they had this amazing feed and they would kind of like figure out what you like and show you more of that. And then they had a team that would watch a bunch of work and give awards, Vimeo staff picks they were called. And if you got one of those, it could literally break your career open. And there were comments and people would kind of meet each other on Vimeo and then meet in real life. It was kind of a community and a discovery platform and it was amazing. And it was where all the motion designers hung out. Well, something happened. I'm not entirely sure, but that's gone, just completely, okay? So Vimeo just sucks now. It's not good. And a lot of people have noticed this over the years, but no one's really done anything about it. And then, just this last year, at the end of the year, 2 people had the exact same idea, okay? So that bottom right image there, that's from a website called Friender. Now, Friender is started by a motion designer who's been in the industry for a long time and has impeccable taste, amazing design instincts. And if you go to that site as visual designy people, you are going to love it. And you're gonna think, this is gorgeous. Holy cow, they spent a ton of time thinking through the branding and the language and all of these things, right? okay, now I want to use it. Well, you can't because we haven't built it yet. But we want you to sign up for the pre-sale list, right? Literally, I think 1 month before that, my friend Tyler, who founded a company called Motion Array, you may have heard of it, it's like a template site. So he founded that company years ago, he sold it, and he's been kind of an entrepreneur since then. He noticed the same thing. He's like, Vimeo sucks, I should make a better one. He did the total opposite thing. He spun up just a prototype of what he was thinking in like 2 days. And that looks pretty plain. It didn't even look that good when he showed it to me. But he showed me how quickly the videos loaded and how there were branding options Vimeo didn't give you and how he was already starting to like figure out how you could recommend videos to people. And I said, this is really cool. You need to get some artists on it. So he reached out to a bunch of artists and I helped him. I did some intros. And next thing you know, there's like 100 artists on it. And so now there's all these videos and now all these artists are on it. And they're giving him feedback. Oh, this feature sucks. This feature sucks. This is ugly. No, change this, change this. And he's, and so he's just every day he's fixing stuff and it gets better and better and better. Next thing you know, Buck is on frame rate. Ordinary Folk is on frame rate. Oddfellows is on frame rate. Ariel Costa is on frame rate. Now there's hundreds of artists and studios on frame rate. And it started to gain traction. Do you guys know who Justin Cohn is? If you don't, just in case, right? Yeah, the Cone. So the Cone started a website called Motionographer, okay? And he's not associated with it anymore. But since then, he's been at Buck for years, okay? Dream job. He quit Buck to go work at Frame Rate like 2 weeks ago. So who's gonna win? The one that made it perfect before launching it, or the one that just got it out there and started getting feedback immediately? Right? Who would you bet on at this point? So I hear this story constantly, okay? And beautiful but theoretical will lose to ugly and it works every single time, okay? So the solution to not make this mistake is just tattoo this somewhere. Your first draft should be borderline humiliating. Just eat it, all right? And here's the thing, you already know this because you're at Ringling, right? And you have great teachers who've taught you all of this. If a client came to you and said, I need 50 social media ads, you wouldn't disappear for 3 months and then show up with 50 social media ads and say, here you go. That wouldn't work. You'd come up with 10 ideas and you'd just say them out loud and they'd hate 8 of them, but they'd kind of like these 2 and then you'd tweak it and then you'd do some sketches and they wouldn't like those either, but you'd finally start to get somewhere and then you'd do mood boards and style frames and motion tests and animatics and finally you'd have one that they like and then you'd do the rest of them. You have to go through that painful process of making something that they don't like, but you find out as quickly as you can, okay? So most first-time founders do the complete opposite of this, so don't do that, okay? There's actually a term for this. It's called the minimum viable product. If you get into entrepreneurship, you'll hear it all the time, the MVP. What is the crappiest version of this that I can just put out there to see if anyone even wants it before I waste my time? So I learned this lesson almost by accident, but I want to tell you how well it worked out. So the first course that we ever sold at School of Motion was called Animation Bootcamp, okay? And it came out, I think the first version of it, we're on like version 4, but the first version came out like 13 or 14 years ago. And at that time, there was no such thing as a motion design class that was more than like $100, okay? And I had done the math. I wasn't looking to just like make a little money with School of Motion. I was like, I want to build a business so I can have other people helping me and we can grow and we can teach everything. That's what I want. In order to do that, I'm gonna need a company capable of generating millions of dollars somehow. And so you do the math and you're like, if I'm selling $100 courses, how many of those do I need to sell? It's too many. So what if we made it a $500 course, right? And at the time that was unheard of. And I thought, no one's gonna want this. But what if I make it really long and I do a good job and then there's homework and I'm critiquing your work and there's this community and we're doing live streams and we make it this whole experience that lasts 12 weeks and it's gonna be the most amazing thing ever. Of course, people will see that and want it. And so I told my business coach about it and she said, okay, that sounds cool, Joey. How long is that gonna take you to make all of that and figure out how the hell you're gonna do it? I said, I don't know, 3-6 months? She goes, what happens if you do all that and you make this class and no one buys it or 2 people buy it, which would be almost worse than if no one bought it, right? And I was like, well, that would suck. Like, that wouldn't be good for me. So what she told me to do was don't make the class. She said, you have a small email list. Email them and tell them, I'm gonna do a 1-hour live stream and I'm gonna tell you about this idea I have. And I thought, this is stupid. She's like, at the end of it, I want you to ask people for money for this class. Get them to buy it right then. I was like, this is nuts. Why would anyone buy something that doesn't exist? So I did exactly what she said. I taught a little bit of animation so they knew I knew something. I explained my vision for Animation Bootcamp. And at the end, I put up a buy now button, okay? And I was so scared no one would buy it, I gave everybody 50% off. So it was $250 for a 12-week class. And I thought if 5 people buy it, I'll be able to sleep tonight. I had 20 spots open. And I put the buy now button in the chat, and I crossed my fingers, and it sold out in like 3 minutes. And then instantly, my email inbox filled up with everyone else saying, oh my God, I was too slow. Please open more spots. I need this. Oh my God. Okay. So I didn't spend a second building the class yet. I already knew people were willing to pay money for it. Think about how much pain that potentially saved me. So then I was like, okay, well, more people want it. I ran the same live stream, the exact same one week later, 20 more spots, and that one sold out in 1 minute. So in about 4 minutes, that was $10,000. That's more money than I'd ever made in my life in that amount of time. And I had no product. There was another good thing about this, okay? So A, I knew people wanted it. I had validated it, okay? This is the step most people skip. On top of that, I now had to make the class. There was a lot of pressure on me. It was a lot of work. It would have been easy to burn out and stop in the middle if I wasn't making money from it yet. That happens to a lot of people. They have this great idea, and as they're building it, they realize how hard it's gonna be, and they just stop. But if someone's already given you money, you won't stop. It's like hacking yourself, right? So the pre-sale, it didn't just validate the idea, it made it impossible for me to not make this product. And once it was made, now I could just sell it over and over again. And the second time, I think we sold out in like 3 minutes, but it was like $50,000. And I remember talking to one of my colleagues from Ringling, and I told him about this, and he was like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, I found something that people, like, it's painful. But you don't know it's painful unless they give you money. That's a really important lesson. I did the exact same thing for another company I co-founded with Joe Donaldson, who used to teach here too. He spent the last several years as the design director of Buck. He's a very good designer. And he recently moved over to Google. But in 2020, when COVID hit, and all of a sudden it was basically impossible to do live production, animation went crazy. Everybody had to switch to motion design. So it was great for the industry. It was really great for freelancers who all of a sudden could charge whatever they want and double and triple to book themselves because there was no one else, right? You didn't even have to be that good. And the problem was for studios and for agencies that need to hire. It was impossible to find talent. And here I was sitting on School of Motion's, at that time, probably 20,000 alumni. And all of the artists that have been on my podcast and everyone I've met through School of Motion, I had a giant Rolodex. And Joe, having been design director at Buck, has met hundreds of the best freelancers in the world. We thought we could solve this problem. We just need like a cool website with a database and people can log in and we'd charge them for access to it, but it'll be worth it because they'll have access to more talent. Well, that's gonna be hard to build. That's gonna take a long time. We're gonna have to get a lot of artists on there too, right? That's a hard thing to do. So instead what I did was I emailed myself 20 studio owners I knew, and I said, are you having trouble finding talent? Yes. Okay, validated. What if I sent you an email every week with 5 artists on it that you probably haven't heard of? That'd be amazing. Would you pay me $100? I'll send you 4 emails. 100% of them said yes, all of them. Okay? So all I had to do, that is literally the email. I didn't even try, right? That's what it looked like. All I had to do was once a week, pick out 5 artists that I knew and put them in an email and send them to these people, and it was $2,000. It was $2,000. 20 studios, $100 each. So I had to do very little work to validate this. After that, I already knew this is something people are willing to pay for. So I asked them, would you pay a few $100s if I let you use a tool where you could look up hundreds of artists? And 15 of them said yes. And so then we built V1 of Rollo, and we did a beta with these 15 studios, and as soon as they started using it, they're telling us everything wrong with it. This doesn't work, this needs to be better. We need more artists like this. And so Joe and I very quickly worked hard and figured out how to do all of that. And then at the end, we had a product that had been battle tested, it had been validated with money, and when we launched, instantly tons of studios signed up. And Rollo is currently under contract to get acquired. So this tactic works. But most people don't do it because they're afraid of it looking bad or something like that. But I'll tell you what's way worse than you launch something and some rando on the internet says, oh, I don't like the logo or something like that. What's worse is you spend 6 months building something and you launch it and no one cares. And I've seen that happen a lot. All right, here's the second mistake. And I want everyone to sit with this one. I'm sure Ed has probably had talks with some of you about this kind of thing. This is the hardest one to crack, I think. You already know what to do. You're just not doing it. So yesterday, I went on LinkedIn and I just used the free version, set up some filters, and found 2,000 creative directors in the advertising and media space. So if I needed to look for a job or if I had to freelance again, I would just email all of them, right? Oh, I don't want to email them all myself. Oh, there's tools that can do that. I'm curious. I wonder how they work. I'll figure it out, okay? And I'll do it. All of you could do that tomorrow, right? If you're down with some of these like AI tools that work with LinkedIn, you literally could have your reel in front of 2,000 people tomorrow. But you won't do it, most of you. Maybe some of you will. I'm trying to guess who would. But most of you won't. And it's weird, right? Like you guys know that you should be doing this, right? Like I'm sure Ed is harping on you. Network. Get on LinkedIn. Be commenting on people's posts. DM people. You're a student. Use that right now. It's like a secret password to get into places. I'm a student and everyone wants to help you, right? Do that. But people don't. Just to make another point, I looked up, I was like, okay, what's like a more practical version of this, okay? Like how many of you would like to make some money tomorrow? Like some extra money, okay? So I looked up all the restaurants around Ringling, and I found one called FutureProof. I've never been there. Looks pretty good. Okay. Oh, good. Awesome. Okay, cool. So this is your task, okay? FutureProof's Instagram page is terrible. Like most local restaurants, they don't know how to do social media. They don't know how to do good creative and get views and stuff like that, right? They're chefs, This isn't their thing. But boy, wouldn't they love to get some more views on their Instagram page? That would really help get some foot traffic in there. And all of you have all of the skills to do that. You can design, you're creative, you can come up with concepts. I'm sure most of you know how to shoot some video and edit it a little bit. You could make awesome Instagram reels. So what if you walked into FutureProof tomorrow or right after this talk? I don't know if they're open, but go in there, find out. And just ask for the manager and say, hey, I'm a student at Ringling. Got to use that word, okay? While you're a student, use that word. It really helps. And just say to them, look, I'm trying to build up my portfolio, and so I'm offering local restaurants this deal. I'm going to make you 3 Instagram posts, and you can use them as reels or as posts. And if they get 1,000 views, you pay me $300. If they don't, you pay me 0. And you can say no, but I'm just trying to help local businesses and build my portfolio at the same time. Whoa. If you're a restaurant and you think you can get a few more customers for $300, that is cheap. And then what happens if they say yes? Now you go next door to whatever store, the restaurant's next door, and you say, hey, FutureProof's working with me, and they said that you might be interested in the same thing. You run the same pitch, but now you've got social proof because someone said yes already. So now your odds go way up. I guarantee if you did this and you spent 2 hours walking around to the restaurants just around Ringling, every one of you could make $1,500 tomorrow. But you won't. Will you? Who's going to do it? You could, literally. I just gave you the playbook. I told you what to say. I told you exactly what to say. You know what to do. You just have to do it. Now, why do people not do what they know they're supposed to do? You probably have an idea. People get fear backwards, okay? Especially creative types. We overthink things. So most people tell themselves, I'm afraid it won't work, and my ego will be bruised, right? Or I'll lose something, right? That's bushy. I don't buy it. You're afraid it will work. I'm serious. Sit with that. I think most people are actually more afraid that it's going to work because if it works, what does that say about everything you've been told? What does that say about how hard you've been working and the results you've gotten to this point? When you can literally just go like a block away and say some words with your mouth and money appears. And you get to do creative things in exchange for that. What does that say about like all of the lessons that you've been taught and what your teachers have been telling you, right? Not the Ringling teachers, I'm talking about before that, of course, okay? So what's the solution here? The solution is you have to make not doing it more painful than doing it. You have to trick yourself, okay? So I talked a little bit about that. Getting paid before the thing exists, that's a great way to do it, okay? And the fear is always gonna be there. All you have to do is get creative with how do I make this way more painful to fail at, to not even try, versus trying and failing. If you walk into FutureProof and they tell you, no, we're good, thanks. What has happened to you? You're embarrassed for 5 seconds? That's it, right? And a lot of people think that this is like you have to have courage, you have to be born with that. That's not true. Courage is very unreliable, right? Some people maybe have more natural courage than others, but you can't count on courage. Make inaction painful enough that you don't need it. So Ed probably remembers this. So when I left Ringling and I was focusing on School Motion, we were making $0. Okay, so I left a job that was paying me for a job that paid $0, okay? And I needed to figure out quickly how it could make money. And so I had this idea, I was gonna make a class, but I also knew my audience wasn't big enough. I needed more social proof, I needed more people I could market to. I'd made, I don't know, maybe 20 tutorials over the past 3 years or something like that. It wasn't enough. And so what I did was I stole this idea. So I was already into entrepreneurship. I was listening to a podcast. It was called Entrepreneur on Fire. It was not very good, but it was one of the most popular ones simply because it had an episode every day. The host was annoying, the guests weren't great, the questions were terrible, but it was every day. And they were one of the top podcasts in the world. And I thought, well, I don't know how good I am at this tutorial thing yet, but what if I just made a lot of them really quickly? So who in here has actually tried to make a tutorial before? Anybody? It's way harder than you think if you've never done it. It's painful. It's a weird thing to do too, if you think about it. But so I knew that making 30 that I could release every day, technically like 6 weeks because it was Monday through Friday, every weekday, that was probably gonna kill me, okay? And my wife had just told me she was pregnant with our third kid, so she was in a bad mood. It was a tough time, okay? So I needed to have literally a sword hanging over my neck that if I don't do this, that is way worse than if I try and fail. And so what I did 2 things. One is I told the entire internet as much as I could, I'm doing this starting this day. I had made 0 tutorials the day I announced it. I had not made a single one. I got on Reddit, I got on mograph.net, I got on Vimeo, I got on every website I could, I emailed my mailing list. I just tried to spread the word as far as I could. I'm doing this. Man, you're crazy. I was like, I know. And I told Ed what I was doing, and he had a great idea. What if Ringling sponsored it? I was like, oh, that's cool, because School Motion's making $0. So like any dollar is better than that. Ringling was one of our first customers now that I think about it. Thank you, Ed. So they sponsored it. And so now, not only did the entire internet know I said I was gonna do this thing, and I'd be humiliated if I didn't, someone had given me money to do it, and I had to now, right? So I had no choice. I just did it. And it was a photo finish. It was a close call to get them all done in time, but I did it, and that led to Justin Cohn reaching out, who was a hero of mine at the time, and did a whole profile about me on Motionographer, and my email list quadrupled in 30 days, which is nuts. And when it was over, I now had this big audience that I could market Animation Bootcamp to. And it was so hard and so painful, and if I had known how hard it was gonna be and I didn't have a gun pointed at me, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I knew that, and I said, somebody point a gun at me, make me do it, okay? All right, this is a really important lesson. There's a lot of ways to do this, right? Like, I don't know, I've heard a lot of different hacks to do this, but like if you say you're gonna do something to your friend and they're like, yeah, sure. It's like, okay, take an embarrassing picture of me right now, or take a video of me saying 6, 7, 15 times in a row. And if I don't do this thing by tomorrow at 8 p.m., I want you to post it and tag all of our friends, right? You can engineer it even like for free, doing simple stuff like that, okay? So try to always find the way to make it impossible for you not to do the thing that you know you should, but you're not, okay? All right, third mistake. And this one's a little more esoteric, right? Especially like at this point in your career, but it's actually probably financially the most damaging one. And so I wanna just get it out of the way now. I want you guys to just start thinking like this, okay? So I have a lot of friends who own restaurants. This is very accurate, okay? I don't know how many of you like have family members or friends that are in the restaurant business. This is pretty darn accurate, okay? Restaurants, if they want to make more money, have to sell more food to more people, which requires more people to work there, okay? All of the revenue growth is gonna scale linearly with the number of people, and it is so hard to find people that are good enough to work at a restaurant, but also don't mind being paid nothing, okay? It is probably the hardest business. So that's just a feature of the restaurant model, okay? If you're getting into the restaurant business and you don't know this, you're gonna have a terrible time, okay? You should know this going in. This is what it's going to be like, and accept that. And maybe you're fine with that because food's your life, you love it. So it's not that the model's bad, it's that it might not be right for what do you want, okay? You can work incredibly hard in the wrong model and you can never get where you wanna go. And I had that happen to me. I talked about it when I talked about toil. The model matters as much as the effort you put into it, okay? So here's the solution. Figure out what do you want, and then figure out your model, okay? Now, there's a lot of different business models, but broadly speaking, you can split them into two groups: service-based, product-based, okay? Now, most of you probably think, I'm gonna be a motion designer, I'm gonna do motion design. That is a service business, okay? If you're freelancing, you have a certain number of hours, and you will find out what people are willing to pay for those hours, and that is the maximum amount you can make by yourself. That's it, okay? Now, there's caveats to that, but in general, that's how it works. If you start a studio, you now have the exact same problem, except you have more hours because you have other people's hours that you can move around, right? And studios can get quite large, okay? I don't know if any of you know how much money Buck makes. It's a lot, okay? It can work really, really well, but the path to get there is hard. Service businesses are way easier to start. If you want to be a motion designer, just, go to Ringling, get really good at motion design, have a reel. People will hire you because they can see you're talented. That's the easy part. Now you want to 10x the amount of money you make? Super hard, super hard. The other model is product-based, okay? And this is probably intuitive for some of you, but just to make it super clear, a product is something that you can sell one of or 1,000 of, and it really doesn't matter to you, okay? If someone goes to School Motion's website right now and buys a membership, or if 500 people come and buy 500 memberships, it makes no difference. It's just more money, right? I'm oversimplifying it. Of course, we might have to hire a support person, we need some more TAs, but these are all solvable problems. But I don't need to hire a new person for every 10 School of Motion students. Grayscale Gorilla doesn't have to hire another person for every 100 light kits they sell, right? It scales to infinity. So the upside is way higher. The downside of this, it is much harder to start those businesses. Way harder than a service business, okay? Now, neither of these models are wrong, right? There's not a right one and a wrong one. They're both valid. But what is wrong is picking one by default or not picking one at all, right? I didn't think about the fact that a studio is a service-based business and what are the implications of that when I started Toil. Never crossed my mind. Had I done that, I don't know that I would have had the wisdom to still not do it. I probably still would have. But I might have not lasted 4 years. I might have recognized earlier what was happening. Oh, this is not congruent with my life. This is not what I want. So figure out what you want first, then pick the model that gets you there, not the other way around. All right. So you've got models, okay? In my career, I've had the service model, everything leading up to and including Toil, right? If Toil wanted more revenue, we had to do more work, and work meant humans in front of computers doing work. So if we got a giant job, I had to hire more humans to do it, okay? It scales linearly. School of Motion is a product business. It's a little bit of a hybrid because we do have teaching assistants that critique homework, and we do need more of them the more students we have, but we have a math formula that has calculated that for us, and we've done the math, and we have the operations. That's all figured out, and so we could handle 1 million students if they showed up, right? And then Rolo is a purely product business. It does not matter how many people sign up and pay for Rolo. It is essentially zero extra work, okay? You can engineer businesses like this. You can even find jobs that work a little bit more like this, right? I know this might seem like a dirty word, but some of you, whether you like it or not, may actually be good at sales. Do you know how salespeople get paid? they get a commission. They get paid on how much they sell. And it's pretty common that salespeople get paid more than the founder of a company. Mine is getting close. He's really good, right? And so that's a job, but it works differently than trading your hours for money. Now it's about how effective you can be, how much leverage you can create, right? So this doesn't just have to be in business too. This can be in a job. Now, motion designers probably don't think of themselves as salespeople until you're freelance, and then, sorry, you are. You can also choose the size of your career, right? Of your business, of your job. And motion design is a huge industry. Since I've gotten into it, it has 100x'd in size and scope. And there are a billion companies like this, okay? On the big end, you've got giant studios. You've got Buck, you've got Territory Studio. You've got studios with hundreds of people on staff doing 9 figures, okay? So you can scale that service-based business as big as you want, okay? It's a little harder to get there, but once you figure it out, you can do it. You've got, obviously, the software companies. I know Rive was here earlier this week. Rive is aiming to be a huge company, right? They've raised investor money and stuff like that. They are hopefully going to be a billion-dollar company one day. Maxon, I know that sounds silly to think of Maxon as like a company trying to grow, but I remember when Maxon was this little company trying to get people to use Cinema 4D. So those are big companies. Big companies work differently. And that's kind of beyond the scope of this talk. I'm happy to talk afterwards with anyone that's curious about the differences, but your life working at a big company is different. Your life running a big company is going to be different than a medium company. So School of Motion, I would consider a medium-sized company in motion design. We have about 15 full-time employees. We have, at any given time, maybe 30 to 40 part-time teaching assistants working for us and a bunch of contractors, okay? So we're not massive, but we're not tiny. We're not 1 or 2 people either, okay? Grayscale Gorilla, about the same size. And then you've got studios like Newfangled, Ordinary Folk. Maybe there's anywhere between like 6, 10. Ravi's a good example, right? These are medium-sized. It's not just 1 person or 2 people calling themselves a studio. It's an actual team, but they're not huge. And so your work-life balance, the amount of money you have to make, the amount of managers you have to hire, all of that changes. And small, it may seem counterintuitive, but actually sometimes based on what do you want, your best bet is to stay small. I am good friends with Jake Bartlett. He is one of my favorite people. I'm sure a lot of you watch his stuff, okay? Jake has deliberately chosen to just work for himself, okay? He doesn't want to have a staff. He could start School of Motion. He's talented enough. He could. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want the headache of that. He's perfectly happy with his life. He figured out what he wanted, and he got it, and he's happy, okay? You've got Battle Axe that makes Overlord and Rubber Hose, and that's Adam Plouffe and his wife running that company, okay? And they do great. And then you've got Imani LaRussa, who is sort of an influencer, amazing visual effects, After Effects artist. She's killer, right? I think she may have like some representation now, but it's just her. It's not like a business, right? And she makes plenty of money and she gets to do what she wants. She's happy. She could make way more if she started her own thing and started a content company or an online school, whatever. She doesn't want it. She's not gonna do it. Justin Klaus Harder is one of the most talented designers alive, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't know who he is, klausstudios.com, it'll blow your mind. Incredible designer. And he could easily start a studio and kill it. He doesn't want to, right? So these are choices you can make too. And again, it's not like wrong, correct, that's not how it works. It's what do you want? Do you want to own a mega yacht one day? And it's okay if you do. You're gonna have to start a big company. So know that going in, know what that means, know what your life will look like. Do you wanna make mid-6 figures and not have to work super hard and not take tons of risk and that's plenty? Stay small, for God's sakes, right? It's a lot less stressful. Just choose it, be deliberate. All right, so a couple more things. I wanna dispel this illusion here. So there's this thing that I used to believe, and because no one ever told me differently, that a job is this secure thing. You get a job, and yeah, the job, you have a boss, they tell you what to do, so you don't have as much freedom, but it's like security. You get a paycheck, they're taking the taxes out for you, you don't have to think about that, you get health insurance, right? You feel taken care of, it's safer. And then there's entrepreneurship, where you gotta figure everything out yourself, and you may fail, and if you fail, you're definitely gonna go bankrupt and be homeless and all of those things, right? But total freedom, do whatever you want. And those are both completely untrue. Okay? I can tell you that there have been years where School of Motion was not doing well. And It was so stressful. I did not feel free. I did not feel in control. It's like that Batman scene where Bane goes, "Do you feel like you're in control?" I did not feel like I was in control, okay? I had the freedom, technically, but it wasn't worth much. And then on the other side, when you get a job, it's like, okay, I have a job. As long as I do a good job, I'm safe, right? That happened last week. Now, AI's in the title. It doesn't matter. Like, this happens all the time, okay? For many different reasons. In this case, this company was profitable. They weren't hurting. They didn't need to lay off the staff to make payroll or something like that. They were kind of moving in a different direction with the way they want to operate their company. They want to be more automated, more AI focused. But a lot of times it comes down to, it's a publicly traded company, there's a board of directors, the profits aren't high enough. You know what, we have this division that's not making money, get rid of it, right? Or, in a lot of cases, it's the company's not doing well, we're gonna go bankrupt, we need to cut 30% of our staff. Or, we shut the whole thing down and everyone loses their job. So our options are, everyone loses their job, or 30% of the people lose their job. And guess what's gonna happen? Every time, okay? So this security thing is kind of an illusion, and it can be a comfortable one, right? It can feel more comfortable. I just want you to know it's not true, okay? So, in closing, you do not need a job. A job is a means to an end. You need income. A job is one way of getting income. Starting your own business is another way. Consulting, being a salesperson, walking around to Fushipoki, that's another way, okay? What you need to know is this. We started here, okay? We're ending here, and I'm hoping that this question's a little harder to answer than it was at the beginning. And I hope that it's not immediately, I want a job, popping into your head. I hope it's something a little bit deeper than that, okay? This is the way. Most of you, by the way, are going to get jobs out of Ringling, okay? If you've never had like an adult job, like a real job, you should go get one, absolutely. But just know why. Know why you're getting it. Don't think that that job now unlocks your life. No, it's a stepping stone, right? And maybe you have that job for the rest of your life because you love it so much, but choose that yourself. Don't let the job choose that for you, okay? Know what you're doing and why. And lastly, I really would love everyone to do this tonight, okay? It is kind of mind-blowing. It seems stupid, I know, and it's a vision board, and my kids are cute, right? Like, do it. It will kind of blow your mind because you may, I don't know, you may be like towards the end of your motion design journey and figure out like, actually, I really like this producing thing a little bit more. I know all this After Effects. I feel like I have to use it. But actually, I don't know, I'm kind of more a people person. Maybe I should be a producer. And I remember one of my students at Ringling actually ended up, I think she's like the head of people ops at Buck now, Barrett. And she was like, when I was teaching her, she thought she'd be a motion designer, and she turned out to be like really good at these other things, right? And she chose to go in that direction, and it's okay, right? Figure out what you want and then choose that. But if you do this exercise, just like I described it, you will find that quite often your perfect day is over here and you're not aimed at it, okay? And at least you know that. Even if you don't yet have the tools and the network and all those things to aim it perfectly, you'll know and you'll be able to course correct, okay? And so after I made this mood board, or this vision board, like I said, 2 years later, 100% of it came true, including the hot tub, okay? Which was a big goal, all right? So thank you guys for listening to me rant. I hope this gave you something to think about. And I'd love to take some questions.
When it comes to you're talking about scales in business, like big, medium, and small. What are some of the, how do you tell if your lifestyle will be able to fit the scale of business that you want?
Yeah, that's a great question, okay? And I'd recommend also chat with the Ravi guys because they're in that kind of the smaller mid-level studio, right? And they told me right before this, they don't want to get big. Right? They've made that choice. So small to me, could be anything from one person to maybe 3 people, right? Because any more than that, you start to have coordination costs. So when it was just me running School of Motion, and I had a tutorial idea, I could sit down and record it right then and have it up 2 hours later. If I have an idea for a tutorial right now, it will probably be a week before it comes out. And it's not because I've gotten slower, it's because when you have a company and I have full-time editors and I have a producer and she's scheduling things I don't even know are going on, right? Because we've got 15 people, it just slows things down. And so if you're Jake Bartlett and you want to be able to react right now, like After Effects just dropped a new thing, I want to react right now, you can't do it if you're medium-sized, right? And we've just sort of accepted that as like the cost of being this size. And so we've sort of figured out other ways. So in terms of how that affects your life, really, the bigger your company gets, the bigger the problem gets, right? So right now, if someone goes away for vacation or something like that, right? One of our producers is pregnant with her first kid, right? And so she'll take maternity leave at some point. And when that happens, we're fine, right? We've got like a staff, we've got operations around that, right? We can handle that. But if you're a 3-person company that relies very closely on all 3 people, you don't have as much slack built in. So it's kind of things like that. At a big company, those problems kind of go away, but now the problem is I want to get something done and it's going to take 6 months because it has to go through lawyers and all these other things. And some people are fine with that, right? Some people like slow, some people like fast. I already mentioned I'm very impatient. And so the perfect balance for me tends to be like the size of company we are right now. I need the firepower of having a team, but I don't want to be 50 people, 100 people, and have middle management and stuff like that. There was a time when School of Motion was twice as big as it is now. We had 32 full-time people. Our payroll was way higher. It was so much more stress. I was not nearly as connected to like the product and the marketing as I am now because I had like layers of people in between me. And I didn't like it. And it just wasn't really sustainable, right? And I kind of learned the hard way that for our business, that's not gonna work, right? So if I had known what I know now, would I have done it differently? I probably would have. I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. I think the best way is like, do you love managing people? Like, does the idea of having performance reviews and like, training, does that like, some people love that. I'm promise you. Those people exist, right? They love it, okay? Those types of people do better at a larger company, right? Because the companies need that. That is kryptonite to me, right? And so I probably knew that long ago. I just didn't realize what it would mean to cross a certain threshold of company size, right? So it's really more about your comfort level with like dealing day to day with managing people. Yeah. Yeah, good question.
I'm Giovanni. I'm a senior in motion, and I really like the section at the beginning where you're kind of breaking down your ideologies on the secrets of life. And I'm curious, you mentioned you're figuring out your gifts, and so for you that was curiosity, and then kind of evaluating your talent stack, and that was the voice acting, After Effects, marathon running. What do you feel like is the relationship between the gifts that you have in life and the talent stack that you've been able to build up?
I think all of the talents came from curiosity, right? I'd say maybe the music thing is slightly different because, I don't know how many of you are musicians, probably a bunch of you, right? There is something to the idea that some people sort of I was born hearing rhythms, like I just hear it. It's not hard for me. Some people it's harder, right? And so there's kind of some overlap there, right? But I think if you look at, marathon running, I'm kind of figuring this out in real time right now. So marathon running, I got into it because I liked the idea of doing something stupid, okay? It is objectively stupid to run a marathon. Has anyone run a marathon in here? Anybody? Okay, cool, yeah. It's and you know what I'm saying, right? Your nipples bleed. Your shirt chafes your nipples until they bleed. It's stupid. But the way you feel after you do it is super addictive because you're like, I just did something that most people on this earth will never do and can't do, okay? And so I don't know what I'd call that, but that's another gift. I chase that, right? So maybe that's kind of related to curiosity. The music thing really helped me as an editor, without kind of knowing it, just understanding rhythm and not being afraid of quick things and slow things and understanding contrast just sort of through music. That really helped. But I think curiosity really is at the core of all of it for me, right? For some people, it's completely different. I don't know, I'd have to ask Justin Klaus Harder, who I mentioned, but he does one thing better than anyone on earth, okay? His thing might be mastery, right? If he was up here, maybe he'd say something like that. And he's a very curious guy too, I'm sure. But like, I don't really care about mastery, believe it or not, right? I want to be good enough at enough things where my talent stack now makes me the #1 in the world at this really weird thing that no one else cares about, right? That's more important to me than being the best animator, the best designer. That's a different path. But for some people, their gift is patience and mastery. That is not mine, okay? So hopefully that helps. Yeah, yeah.
We've got a question here. Stand up. That's on.
Okay. Hi, my name is Soren Flaherty. I'm a sophomore. I really appreciated your talk. How do you get past that like initial anxiety of taking that first step, especially with all the risks that come with it?
Yeah. So do you mean like in starting a business or really in anything?
Just in anything, you know,
Yeah.
just going straight into the out of comfort zone.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I would say. So first of all, doing scary things is definitely a muscle. And once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it gets a lot easier, okay? So the trick is you have to figure out how to hack yourself to do it the first time, okay? So, you know, walking into, Fushipoki and finding the manager and cold selling them on this idea, that's terrifying, okay? But how about this? How about you find 10 studios that you would love to intern for, and you know, this is all very easy. You get on LinkedIn, you find them, you find out who's a creative director, who's the executive producer, and then you get on hunter.io or, you know, rocketreach.co. You guys can write these down if you want, or you can just grab the freelance manifesto. You get their email addresses, okay? And you write emails to all of them. Now, what's the scary part? The scary part is hitting send. So don't do that. Schedule it to send tomorrow. That's much easier. Now you've just hacked yourself. You just made it easier to do, right? There's a million things like that you could do. Like, and actually, I used to do that when sending cold emails was scary to me. I would schedule it for like, even just scheduling it for an hour from now. Because I'm like, okay, it didn't send, if I change my mind, and then you go do something else and you don't care anymore, and then it just sends, right? So that's what I would say. Try to find ways to hack your own mind. Yeah.
My name's Hayden Kintz, and I'm a junior. I had a question about more for like students. I feel like when people go into interviews, a common question is usually like, okay, well, where do you want to be, or like, what do you want to do? And like for us that maybe haven't had internship experience, and you don't really know, you haven't worked with other people in a studio, so you don't know what your role will actually be. Mm-hmm. What is like a smart thing to say, or like, how can you prepare for that question?
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'd say it's different if you're interviewing for an internship versus a job, okay? So if you're interviewing for an internship, what I like to hear is, I'm excited to learn as much as possible, okay? That's the point of an internship, right? And so when people say things like, I want to get better at design, or I want to like learn how you guys make YouTube videos or something like that. Like, okay, I get that, but like, I may ask you like to do something really boring, right? And in exchange for that, you're just going to absorb like a sponge, right? So I think that's really like what most places are looking for with interns. They're looking for a sponge, a pain sponge, because they may like one of my internships was at a post house in Boston, and I would have to every morning walk like 2 miles to this specific bakery that the clients liked and get a muffin basket and bring it all the way back and set the muffins up just so, and they get yelled at because I did it wrong. And then in exchange for that, I got 1 hour of Avid time every week, right? Like, so like, now that was a bad internship, right? I've had good internships and bad ones. But really, that's why I got the internship, because they sensed he'll do whatever we need. And really, most of the learning I did there was just by watching. Like, not actually, they didn't let me do much there, but I got to absorb. If you're applying for a job, I think, the biggest tip that I give people who are applying for jobs is to do your homework, right? So if they ask you, what are your goals here? Okay, what would blow my mind if I was interviewing someone for a job at School of Motion, and actually this is a true story. So when we were hiring our first marketing person, right? His name is Caleb Ward, and he now runs Curious Refuge. He co-founded that. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's probably it's the School of Motion of AI filmmaking. So Caleb came to me, and he was like my 10th interview, and I'd heard all these people say, yeah, I want to help you guys get more customers. I want to help you guys make more money. He said, this is broken, this is broken, this is broken, you're doing this wrong. I want to fix all that in like the first 3 weeks. And then he had a plan because he had done his homework. He literally like went through our website and looked at the code and like knew all about it, right? So if you go to a studio and you notice that like their work's amazing, but their website feels old, and you say to them, and they say, so what are you hoping to do? Honestly, don't take this the wrong way. I want to help you make your website better, if that's all right. That's going to blow their mind, right? It's counterintuitive. Wait, you want me to tell them what they're doing wrong? Business owners love that. Absolutely, yeah. Good question.
All right. Hello, I'm Anna Custer, a senior student here in motion design. My question was, you were talking about the difference between services and product-based businesses. So here at motion design, we're normally trained to go down the service route of working for a studio and contributing our skills in that way. I'm wondering, as someone, say, graduating from here, from Ringling's motion design program, how would they go about doing a product-based business? So School of Motion does like the hybrid approach of selling tutorials,
right.
Basically. Are there any other ideas that come to mind for a product-based business with our skill set?
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, well, so first of all, there's a little assumption baked into your question there that I don't even know you realized, okay? You're assuming that you have to, if you have a product, it has to be for the motion design industry. It does not. Motion design is, it's funny, I've been thinking about this a lot the last year because motion design has changed so much. It's gotten so much bigger, and there's all these new things that are technically motion design, but they look totally different than what I'm used to, right? Motion design, the way I've been talking about it lately is it's not like an industry. It's a toolbox that can have all these different tools in it, and you can take that toolbox and you can walk over to like the restaurant industry or the fitness industry or the music industry and use those skills. And Ed was telling me Hunter, one of the ways that he started his company was because he knew how to make it look like a giant, $1 million like brand was behind it, right? Those are skills you have. You don't have to actually work in the motion design industry at all, right? Now, that's the most obvious place. Your skills like apply one-to-one there. So in the motion design industry, like there's a few options, right? So there's obviously like software and tools and assets and training and stuff like that, right? Those also apply to every other industry. There's an accounting version of that. There's a real estate version of that, right? And I think that probably those of you, like if I were in your shoes right now, I'll just say this now, I would be really trying to figure out where AI fits into all this, because we have a team training program. We have companies come to us and we train their teams. And all of them are using AI. All of them are talking about it. All of them want to be using it. They don't know how. And there's really, we're trying to figure out how to help them, but someone could come in right now and print money doing that, right? If you're into the training side. Or if you wanted to, produce Weavy templates for stuff like that. I mean, there's also templates. There's a lot of different things, but also don't pigeonhole yourself as, I have to work in the motion design field. You probably will for a while, but I'm sure you have a talent stack like everybody else, and I don't know what it is, but there's probably things that you're an expert in that have nothing to do with motion design, but those industries would love someone with your skill set to help them do other things, right? So look at it that way.
I'm a junior. Thank you so much for your talk. My question is about Rollo. So you were talking about how it helps studios find talent. Does it work the other way around? Could it be a platform for us right now to go and maybe put a link to our portfolio or put the examples of our work to seek potential studios and clients?
Yeah, good question. So the story of Rollo is we started it during COVID when there was this massive dearth of talent. It was impossible to find freelancers. We built it. It caught on very quickly. It grew very fast. And then after COVID kind of ended, and then there was a financial bubble that kind of burst, Rollo kind of really started tapering off because all of a sudden, now there's plenty of freelancers. It's not hard to find them, right? So the problem that Rollo solves isn't that big of a problem anymore. That's one of the reasons we're selling it. What I'll say is that Rollo absolutely did what you're saying. So I would get emails almost every other day in the heyday of Rollo of an artist saying, oh my God, I just want to let you know I just got reached out by ThinkMojo or by some studio I've always wanted to work with. I've never been able to get on their radar. They found me on Rollo. Amazing, right? So that was awesome to see. Rollo, as good as it is, and I think it's great, is not going to be as good as you learning how to just market yourself correctly, right? Learning how to find the right person at the company that you want to work with, learning how to get their contact information, learning how to like turn them from a cold lead into a warm lead. I know I'm using like gross terms here, but you have to make peace with this at some point. You have to network. If you do that, you are so far ahead of 99% of motion designers out there that you won't need Rolo. You won't need anything. If you're good at sending emails and getting people to like and trust you and you have good work, that's literally all you need. And it seems crazy in 2026 to talk about like emailing people, right? Like, what about social media? Social media is great too. It's a different skill set. Email is still like, as far as like shots taken versus shots hit, email is still the best way to do it. Just form one-on-one relationships with people. That's it. Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much. Very inspiring. I actually have two questions. My name is Elisa. I'm a sophomore in motion design. So my first question is how to better understand whether you're just burnt out or like overwhelmed, or there are other reasons why you don't want something versus it's actually not for you. Because I think a lot of times, like, and lately it's like a popular topic of like, should you walk away from a thing to understand that you want it? Or like, so is there a method of understanding it earlier on? And my second question is, do you think there is value in working with people you don't like? Do you think there is, like, you can still learn from the people?
I like that question a lot.
Or like, would you rather surround yourself with only people that you admire and are inspired by?
That's a great, okay. So for your first question, just read that, okay? So to be more specific, you can, like, everyone suffers from burnout at some point. Typically, like for me, and maybe it's different for everybody, but like I get burnt out when I've said yes to too many things. Okay, it's that simple. I have a poster in my house. I had this line drawing artist, this amazing artist, make a poster for me, just for me, and it says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I stare at that every day because I get asked to do a lot of things. And if I said yes to all the things that sounded cool, I would get burnt out all the time. And I still say yes to too much, okay? Everyone does it. But typically, I recognize it as burnout when it's stuff that like I really wanted to do, and now all of a sudden I don't want to do it. That's usually burnout. What I was talking about, like when I was depressed, when I was running the studio, all of a sudden, I didn't want any of it anymore. There was no part of me that wanted to like when you're burnt out, you kind of want to not be burnt out so you can get back to it. But when it's not burnout, it's different. It feels qualitatively different, right? So I think knowing what you want also makes it easier. Because if you're like, this is what I want, I'm just too tired to do it right now, it's burnout. If you're like, this isn't what I want at all, but I have to do it and now I feel horrible about that, that's not burnout, that's something else, yeah. Now in terms of working with people you don't like, of course not. I would never choose to work with people I don't like, no. I actually have no tolerance for that. Like at School of Motion, we have turned down people for jobs who are geniuses, brilliant. We've had instructors pitch us, like really famous, very, very famous people in this industry pitch us to make a class, and we've said no because I talk to them and I just get this sense, I will not like this person by the end of this process, and I don't want that. And so that's the number one thing at School of Motion is you have to fit into our culture, our quirky little group. And I'd rather hire someone that's not as good, but I like them, right? I want them to succeed versus this genius, right? Not every company's like that. Not everybody's like that. Some people are all about like results. I am not. And so it sounds like you're probably not either. So I would say, like, no, don't, like, now, are you going to work with people you don't like? Absolutely, yeah, 100%. I mean, fortunately, it hasn't been that many in my career. There's probably been like 3 or 4 that really I thought were assholes. Most people are pretty nice in this industry, but you should never choose that, right? If you get a job and there's someone there you don't like, well, that's life, and you'll learn things from that. But intentionally, no, I would never do that.
Do you think there are like mitigation techniques for like handling it better?
If you get hired somewhere and let's say you get hired as, a motion designer and there's an art director above you who's just terrible. Okay, I had this experience. Basically you just do what you would do like if there was someone you didn't like at Ringling. You just like don't like hang out with them, right? You be professional. This is something that is kind of a muscle you'll build as you get into the real world and you get your first jobs and stuff. Like there's the way that you kind of act with your colleagues here at Ringling, and then once it's real money and clients on the line, there is a little bit more polish to it, right? And so you'll learn pretty quickly like how to be professional and give them what they're asking for, but you're not going to go hang out with them. You're not going to go try to grab lunch with them, and just know. And then if it's toxic, you get out of there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
no problem.
great.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh,
There we go.
sorry. Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm a first-year student in motion design. My question was concerning your topic on perfection being your enemy. So, especially as beginning our journeys in this industry, how can we practice this idea of defeating perfection without constantly beating ourselves up because we didn't hit the mark that we put on ourselves?
Yeah, that's great. You said your name was Sydney?
Yes.
That's my middle name. I love it. Okay, sweet. Yeah. Okay. So Sydney, I think that's kind of a muscle that your faculty is going to help you develop, right? When you have a project here, they're not going to let you wait until it's done to see it, And you're going to be showing things to your teacher that you're embarrassed about, right? And now that you know that that's a thing and you recognize that for what it is, sometimes you can kind of get meta with it where, I don't know if anyone meditates, but this is kind of the whole point of meditation, is to recognize that the thought you're having, I don't want to show this because it's embarrassing, that is like an object you can just put down for a second and just make your body show, just show the thing. And once you do that a few times, it becomes easy. And you'll also realize that everybody feels exactly the same way as you. Everybody is embarrassed about the first draft, right? But you will always get a better result in the end if you go through that painful process. If you're too precious about your thing and you won't show Ed or you won't show Morgan your work until you're happy with it, you may go wildly off the mark. And in the real world, this is dangerous. If you do this with clients and you've blown half the schedule because I'm going to show you something, it's not quite ready, just give me another few more days, and then they don't like it, now you've burned trust, right? So it is scary, the first few times you do it. Try to just get meta about it. Recognize, I am, just kind of make it like you're a robot. I am feeling fear. I'm just going to ignore that and do it, right? It sounds silly and it sounds like, that's too hard. How do you do that? You literally just decide to do it and do it once. And once you do it once and you don't die and you don't explode and no one comes out of the shadows to kill you, then you realize, that wasn't bad. I can do that again. And the 10th time you do that, you won't even think about it, right? So just, again, hack your brain to get the first one out of the way, okay? The second one won't be as hard, yeah?
My question was, first of all, great presentation, super informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also, I really like what you said about an entrepreneur just being someone who wants to design their life. Sorry. I wanted to ask about what you said earlier about student being like a secret passcode, and it kind of sounded like you had some personal experiences about it, and I was wondering if we could hear about it.
Yeah, so I assume Ed still says this. He used to say this once a week when I was here. He would tell the students, you tell people you're a student. And the reason is this. So I'm a 44-year-old grown-ass man, okay? If I email somebody and ask for something, it feels like I'm a salesman or something. The guard automatically comes up. Okay? You're a student. You're learning, right? It's kind of in their mind. And here's the thing. They don't realize by the way, that opening animation for FutureProof blew my mind. I have never worked on anything that cool, and you guys are students, right? The people that you're going to be reaching out to have no idea how advanced you are and how capable you are. It's kind of silly. They think of you as, this is like a young person, and I like young people because I was young once, and I remember feeling helpless, and I want to help them. So you get this automatic warmth when you use that word, and it has a shelf life, right? You're not a student forever, right? 4 years, maybe 5 for some of you, I don't know, right? But so I say absolutely use that because it really does open doors. It puts people's guard down, right? Now, after you're not a student anymore, you could be a recent graduate. No, it's not quite as warm, but you can still use that for a couple years, okay? And then you got to compete with the rest of us, right? Yeah.
Actually, let's just give Joey a round of applause. And thank you so much for this great presentation.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.